March 23rd, 2022 Town Board meeting to order. Ms. Marco, please call the roll.
Mr. Christo?
Present.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Present.
Mr. Dotson?
Present.
Mr. Mastriani?
Present.
And Mrs. Collins?
Present.
5 present.
Quorum is present. Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Mastriani, will you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the
flag
of the United States of America,
and to the republic
for which it
for
stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going to reserve any remarks that I might have until the end of the meeting because we do have an executive session on the agenda. Okay. Do I have a motion to enter into executive session?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Christo,
Second.
second by Mr. Dodson, and with the invited attendee of Jonathan Henry Esquire, to discuss the following. Matters relating to the employment history of employee number 011222-1 with additional invited attendee Elaine Gold Esquire. Case recently commenced in the New York State Division of Human Rights. Petorti versus Rotterdam with additional invited attendee Ryan Bailey Esquire by telephone. Parkinson versus Rotterdam with additional invited attendee Ryan Bailey Esquire by telephone. RRA Apartment LLC versus the assessor. And NYSIR ASO Shelmont Central School District versus Rotterdam. I thought Mr. Dodson seconded.
He did.
Ms. Marco, we take the call, call the roll.
Sure. Mr. Christo to go in executive session?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dotson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes to go in executive session.
We'll enter into executive session at 7, according to that, 7:04.
Yep.
All right, since we're all back together, I have just been told we do have a proclamation or presentation. Mr. Mastriani?
We do. Joe, would you like to come down front with me? You can't be cold.
I was, but now I'm not.
She was in the hot room back there. Supervisor Collins, you gonna join us?
Yeah, I guess. I don't feel like I'm being pushed.
Come on over here. Clark, you still here anywhere? Or did you leave?
I'm here.
Come on down, buddy. Joe, come on over. Here, you come right here. Hey, you know what month it is?
March.
That's good.
Just a trick
What are we
question.
celebrating in March?
Women's Month.
Women's History Month.
Women's History.
What does that mean?
We celebrate
Come on.
women that made history.
Yes, and you made history. Why do you think you made history?
I'm old.
You're the first woman supervisor of the town of Rotterdam. So we have a proclamation here recognizing the first woman supervisor of the town of Rotterdam. So tonight, Joe and I are going to read this proclamation for you.
Molly.
Yes, so
Yeah, not you, Jen.
I'm holding out, Lisa.
Good, thank God. Molly, look up.
Please.
You better read it.
But we're going to. We're ready. So a proclamation recognizing the first woman supervisor for the town of Rotterdam for Women's History Month. And it's dated March 23rd, 2022, recognizing Supervisor Molly Collins as the first woman duly elected as supervisor for the town of Rotterdam during Women's History Month of 2022. Very nice. Whereas Women's History Month provides an opportunity to honor the generation of trailblazing women, okay, and girls who have served our community, okay, shaped our progress, and serve as leaders to the public service to our residents. Joe?
Whereas through the history of the town of Rotterdam, the community has elected women to many positions of leadership, whereas the executive position of the town of Rotterdam town supervisor has never been held by a woman, whereas in November of 2021, Molly Collins, after spending 2 years reaching out to residents in our community, earning their trust, was elected as the first woman town supervisor for the town of Rotterdam, Rotterdam, New York. Whereas during Women's History Month, we take the opportunity to reflect on the achievements of women and girls across the centuries and pay tribute to the pioneers who paved the way, let us recommit to fight and help realize the deeply American vision of a more equal society where every person has a shot at pursuing the American dream. In doing so, we will advance economic growth, our health and safety, and security of our nation and the world. Now, therefore, members of the town board of the town of Rotterdam do hereby recognize Women's History Month and Rotterdam's first woman supervisor. We call upon all residents in our community to celebrate Women's History Month and to take pride in their decision to elect Rotterdam Supervisor Molly Collins.
I know I'm there.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
I had no clue, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Get a picture. Hold it up, turn it around, please. Oh, I love this. Okay, I got it. Stay right there.
And we all know how much I love having my picture.
Well, you look darn good, woman. God bless.
Okay.
Yeah, I had to get this closer.
And we're gonna have to start feeding the people in the audience a meal we've been with them.
Well, it will.
Thank you all, thank you very much.
Congrats.
I open the public hearing on introductory local law number 5 of the year 2022 to prohibit parking on a portion of Fruit Street. Ms. Marco, is there anyone who wishes to speak? No. No one? Okay. I'd like to recognize Mr. J. Mack. He's been trying to get this resolution passed for a while, or this local law passed, and hopefully tonight we will do it, and it'll be one step closer to fixing Fruit Street. Okay? All right, is there anybody who signed up who wants to speak? All right, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Christou, seconded.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Dodson. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christou?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera? Yes. Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes,
5 yes to close.
motion passes. Thank you very much. All right. We'll now move on to privilege of the floor. Ms. Marco, is there anyone who wishes to speak?
Evan Christou?
Thank you. Evan Christou, 1305 Cipriana Terrace in Rotterdam, resident of the town of Rotterdam since 1969. In recognition of Women's History Month, I'd like to first also personally acknowledge and congratulate the Supervisor Collins as the town of Rotterdam's first woman supervisor. And I don't want my upcoming comments to take away from that honor in any way, shape, or form. It is a well-deserved honor and it warrants the appropriate recognition. But I will be providing a copy of my following discussion to Ms. Marco to enter it into the record, okay? At the March 9th meeting, March 9th Town Board meeting, Supervisor Collins began the meeting by displaying a prop. This prop displayed was a Neptune water meter. Supervisor Collins then went on to portray some sort of picture that the previous town board did something nefarious and inferred an action lacking transparency regarding water meters. She said that this was very troubling. Supervisor Collins stated she welcomes an explanation, and this is the response to that, okay? First thing that I find trouble is that I thought Supervisor Collins and I had established a civil rapport and an open and honest dialogue. Imagine my surprise when we were totally blindsided with these accusations, which in my opinion really have no bearing whatsoever. What I find troubling is how misleading the accusation truly is, especially when it is our own Deputy Supervisor, Jack Dodson, who brought this whole water meter thing to the forefront in the front burner during his first campaign run for town board. If one searches social media during 2019, as well as town board meetings from that same time period, you will notice that virtually every interaction was a hard campaign for water meters by Mr. Dodson. In fact, I have here in this document, I have here in my hand the document which Mr. Dodson sent on February 6, 2020, in response and support of the Universal Metering Initiative Implementation Plan dated December 30th, 2019, which is, I believe, what Ms. Collins was referring to. It is addressed, Dear Jamie, which I'm assuming is Jamie Malcolm at DEC. If it is another Jamie, I will stand corrected. The letter starts out with, Jamie, thank you for giving me the opportunity to review and respond to the Universal Metering Initiative Implementation Plan dated December 30th, 2019 for the town of Rotterdam. I offer the following comments on this draft plan. Mr. Dodson goes on to list 14 bullet points endorsing water meters, making detailed suggestions on how to bid it out, roll it out. He accuses the previous administration of deliberately avoiding such an implementation, and even suggests how it should be paid for. One of Mr. Dodson's bullet point even states that the $600 average cost for meters installed is reasonable, given to the economics of scale to install approximately 12,000 meters. Another of Mr. Dodson's bullet points state the town of Rotterdam can't use the excuse that a meter project is not affordable to delay universal water metering, which kind of goes against the whole concept of, well, now we're asking for a delay or an extension, when all of this had been brought to the front burner. And clearly, this implementation plan was a DEC requirement to increase the town's water draw. And I'm sure the plan is especially required to get to the permit for the requested new well 6. Mr. Dodson absolutely knows this, and he is clear in his comments that the town should not delay in implementing this plan. I'm going to read the following statement from the DEC, and when I submit this document, it will also have the DEC link to their water requirements. All applications, I'm almost done. All applications for water withdrawal permits require a water conservation program that demonstrates an applicant's water conservation and efficiency measures. These must be environmentally sound, economically feasible, and minimize inefficiencies and water losses. Such measures include, but not are limited to, source and customer metering, and it lists 4 more bullet points. Keep in mind that the town currently does meter commercial industrial users, which require metering as per the Department of Public Works. So large water users are currently metered, such as my restaurant, and commercial users pay their fair share. I have attached a couple of pages also of the Rotterdam Water Distribution System Universal Metering Initiative Implementation Plan, DEC, and there's a number there, Condition 19, Water Meeting and Leak Detection Compliance, which was completed by Prime Engineering on December 30th. This was the initial report where the town sought to increase its water draw permit to up to 12 million gallons per day. This is the document that Mr. Dodson refers to, which verifies that the issue was no secret plan. I suggest that we post the full 185-page document to the town website. Now, if for some reason this did not originally get posted to the website previously, as a member of the previous administration, that would fall on us, and I'm okay with owning that. But this in no way rises to the level of the supervisor's accusation of deception and lack of transparency. What is truly troubling is that I find it hard to believe that you and Mr. Dodson, Madam Supervisor, did not have this discussion prior to the March 9th meeting, which leads me to conclude that your attack on the previous administration was politically motivated and quite misleading to the public, with the exclusion of very important facts regarding the future of water meters. Even if you and Mr. Dodson did not discuss your show and tell presentation prior to the March 9th meeting, there's no way you did not know this was all tied to DSC mandates and requirements. I suggest that we move forward in a more positive direction and stop all this finger pointing. It's a waste of everybody's time for me to have to continuously defend the constant misinformation or half information that has been dispensed regarding the previous administration. Let's look towards the future for the sake of the town, for the good of our community. I urge you, do not try to make your candle shine brighter by blowing out somebody else's. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next person.
Clark Collins.
That'd be nice. Clark Collins, 2241 Amsterdam Avenue, Schenectady, New York. I'm the husband of Supervisor Collins. That was good, Evan, but you didn't tell the whole truth. I was here in 2019 and brought the attention of this town board that by wanting to sell water to Gilliland, you were going to trigger this. And basically, I was told I didn't know what I was talking about, I was a liar, and
I never accused you
well,
of any of that stuff,
it
sir.
doesn't matter.
I never
Well, let me
accused
come
you.
on, please, I'm talking. You had your time, let me have mine. So what happened was when you wanted to sell water to Gilliland, it triggered it. And I don't know why you, Samantha, and Mr. Sigdor don't own it. If I do something, I own it, but you guys don't. You're pointing fingers, and just tell the truth. By your accusation of selling water to Gilliland, it triggered this. And I had all the documentation, but you guys don't want to, that's the truth, that's the bottom line. And you're not making a lot of money. You're gonna make maybe $100, $150, $200,000 a year. It's gonna take 34 years to pay for the 14 million, I'll be dead. I'm just saying, why don't you just own it? You guys did it, not this board. It's about time you stood up to the plate and told the truth. What your actions did was trigger the water meters. That's the bottom line.
Mr. Collins? I don't know.
Clark?
Mr. Collins, can I ask you a couple questions?
You
And
can?
I'm not trying to engage in a back and forth. I sincerely have questions based on, the information I got. We're working on well number 6 currently coming online, and your prior experience as a water treatment operator, senior water
Yeah.
treatment operator,
Yes.
I'm sure aware of the process of that. You were involved with the New York Rising Well 5 process as well, right?
Yeah.
So you have much more knowledge on this than I do. Bringing on well number 6, would that trigger the same requirements by DEC to look at water conservation and metering plans?
Well, the first problem is well 5 was never used, never intended to use on daily use. That well was for if we had flooding, so the town would always need water.
Okay.
And you can add all the wells you want, but
No,
just,
no,
no, let me
I'm
finish.
sincerely asking.
We had a speedies permit to pump 10 million gallons of water a day for the town of Rotterdam, and it was sufficient. We never went over 9.7 million gallons of water a day. So you can add another well, doesn't mean it's going to trigger it. What triggers it when you ask for a speedies permit to be increased. And by you selling 2 million gallons of water a day to Gilliland, it triggered a speedy permit. And it was told that, I went to numerous meetings, and the engineer firms told you, if you do this speedy permit, you're going to trigger something that you can't stop. And one of the things you have to do is you have to do a leak detection program, which will cost you God knows how much money, but that's the first step, which should be done.
It's my understanding from the review of the environmental conservation law that bringing on any new water source, including an additional well, requires that we go through the same modification and approval for the permits.
But you don't have to up the speedy permit. What triggered the water meters was asking to pump more than 10 million gallons a day. That's what I was told by McDonald Engineering at the time. Now, I could be wrong, but at the time, if we stayed under the 10 million, there was never a question about water meters.
That may be so, and I'm looking at a more long-term issue, and that bringing that well online, at least my understanding from my review of the environmental conservation law, is that we have to get permission and include those plans either way. The metering plan, as well as the water conservation plan, is required to bring on a new source. And that our well 6, and again, you're the expert in this area, it's my understanding that well 6 needs to come online because our other wells are quite old, and that at some point we need to be able to take them offline for periods of time.
I don't really believe you need another well, to be honest with you, but that's
Okay.
just my personal opinion.
Okay.
But the bottom line is maybe a few people enforce the sprinkling regulations, and I
Oh,
used to try to,
absolutely.
and everything else. And if you did a leak detection system, you would probably discover God knows how many gallons of water you're wasting every day. We had to do a leak detection system in Rotterdam Junction where we put the new tank in.
Right.
And we found numerous leaks in a lot of our water services. So you could probably save, could be 1 million gallons of water a day due to leaks in this town of Rotterdam.
Okay.
I mean, like I'm saying,
So maybe that's a better way for us to look moving forward.
well, I would especially do that before it would be the first step, because it doesn't matter what you do if you're leaking water.
Okay.
And like I say, I'm not trying to be confrontational, but I mean, basically, I know my wife's telling me to shut up.
No, I asked the question. I'm an elected board member. Answer my questions, please.
I really think that what triggered this, and I honestly believe it, I was 100% against selling water to Gilliland.
And I understand that, sir.
And I thought, because, our wells were, it was for town of Rotterdam. And in an emergency situation, great, Princetown has an emergency situation with Rotterdam. But on a daily basis, to sell 2 or 3 million gallons of water, it's a lot of water. And I don't really know how much money you make after expenses.
I agree,
Fair argument.
and
Fair argument.
I want to be clear that my understanding of the agreement with Guilderland was that the state was looking for us as municipalities to find ways to work together, to provide shared services, to have intermunicipal agreements, to provide redundancies.
Right,
Was
I
a word
understand
that
that.
was thrown around quite a bit. And I guess my position at this point is that even if we hadn't done that, by bringing Well 6 online, we're looking at the same issues. And I want to be clear that when I was not included in any of these letters that were later posted to the website in January. January 6th, 2022 and January 7th, 2022, it appears that the town received letters from DEC, one of which specifically references modification to add production well number 6, and that we were going to be required to meet the same obligations of a metering plan.
But you started the process when you decided to sell water to Gilliland, that's the bottom line.
I guess
And
and I understand that. I'm just saying at this point, it's not really relevant because we have to do it anyways.
But the thing of it is, I got one more thing.
No, please.
Is, when you sell water to Gilliland, if it comes to the point where they can buy water cheaper from Rotterdam than they can, and they buy a lot of water from Auburn.
They do. That
So,
was my understanding.
if I ran Gilliland, I could buy water cheaper from Rotterdam, I would ask you guys, can I have another 3-4 million gallons of water a day and save money? I read the contract, and I think it's absolutely absurd that the more water you take, the cheaper it gets. That just makes no sense to me, because the cost of producing water doesn't go down no matter how much you pump. Okay.
So, I think what I'm hearing you say, and I could be wrong, so correct me if I am, is that you think what triggered this is the sale to Guilderland.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, in order to fix that, stopping our sale to Guilderland doesn't resolve.
You can't stop, you can't put,
Correct.
the worms out of the can, you can't do anything about it.
And again, from my perspective, and I'm just gonna, because I was asked to respond to this, my understanding was because the state was pushing for these intermunicipal agreements, these shared services, these redundancies, that was the reason that the state was giving us such a long period of time, 20+ years to look at this.
I don't think you'll wait 20 years. But the
Well,
bottom line-
and I think that's true now, looking at the documentation, but I just want to be clear that that was my thinking at the time, and I understand your point of view, and I appreciate it.
Like I said, that's what triggered this whole thing, and
It may be so, but I think at this point, it is what it is, and you can't take the train off the track. So at this point, how do we work with DEC to make sure that it's affordable and that it's not thrown at us in a short period of time? And I think that's a bigger concern for me now.
Excuse me, I think it's just that the good people here have waited long
Yes.
enough, and this is a conversation that we can have in an open
if
meeting
you want to have a
all the
private
time.
meeting, Samantha, just call me and I'll gladly meet you.
Sir, absolutely. But I think everybody's very interested in this topic right now because of the display of the water meter at the last meeting. So I just want to make sure everybody has
And
access.
my only point was it could have been a conversation. It didn't have to be a presentation of a meter and a finger point. It could have been easily been, but I'd be more, you know where to find me.
Yeah, anytime you guys wanna
I'll meet
talk.
with you anytime. You know
No
that.
problem.
And I apologize if at some point somebody in the prior administration, and I can't speak for everyone, made you feel like, or said that you were a liar or whatever those other comments were. I certainly hope it was not me in any
No,
way
it wasn't.
implying that, because
It was,
I go out of my way to make sure that I don't treat people that way.
And I'd like to be in that same
appreciate it.
category as well.
I always had a good relationship with
Okay.
that.
Okay, good.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to be rude, but poor people in the audience, we're gonna be serving supper soon, or breakfast or something.
We can order some pizzas.
Ron, Dick?
Okay.
Your turn.
All right, this is my first time speaking. One of my concerns,
Sir, could you state your name and address first, please?
Ron Dick, 3230 Franklin Street, right here in Rotterdam. I got concerned with the new board when I read that Paul Sebesta was hired as comptroller. So I don't know why I looked it up, but I saw that we had Elizabeth Greenwood, and she had recently been let go. So it just got my curiosity up, and we hired Sebesta at $38,000. I read, and temporarily. read into the history of him with the Niskayuna board and how Beth went over to the other board. So I really doubted that he was really hired temporarily. And now I just read how he's being extended. So I only say that because it really sparked my interest in overseeing the board, like trying to keep track. And I use the Gazette to do that. So as for the water meters, the problem with the water meters, I think the board has really failed on letting the public know, letting us know what's going on. A massive amount of confusion. Everybody is talking about, like, it has their own truth, their own lies, their own. So from what I see, it's got to be slowed down. Now, I want to know, I wrote this a long time ago in social media, that if we have gotten to the point that whatever we're doing cannot be amended, or, as you just said, the train can't be taken off the track, then I would be wasting my time talking here. And I didn't want, I would be kind of, I'm not embarrassed, but that if we reach that point. Now, the water meters are to be paid for, I assume, by us. It's never been clear. If we're going to pay for the water meters, then I think we should have a say in who gets the contract for the water meters. We should know what's going on with that contract, or who are we talking to. It's the same with the installation of them. If we have to pay for installation, we should know all the negotiations that are going on. Now, as I understand, I think Samantha had a quote saying she was not involved in the discussions with the DEC. And I kind of like to run another thing that raised my interest is why not? Is this just being done, and it's just going to be suddenly, here we have the contract and here we have this, and it's all done and said. So on top of all that, I personally believe water meters are a good idea because I see a lot of wasted water, and it makes me it really upsets me. When I wash my truck, I make sure no water goes all the way down the street. That's my goal. Keep it on my driveway. But I just think it could be handled a lot better without the animosity that's happening. And speaking of animosity, I detect some on this board, which is, it makes it a little dysfunctional. And the last thing is, well, I knew this would happen if I spoke publicly, my mind would go blank. But the other point I would like to see is some kind of a, and I've mentioned this to an oversight committee. An oversight to, for instance, the term defund the police to me does not mean let's get rid of half the police force. Defund the police means an oversight committee, oversight of the board. Where is the overtime? How come there's so much overtime? How come this officer is the highest paid in the town of Rotterdam? That's what I call oversight. If left to just the board, we don't see anything of that. And some run on their campaign is safety. I'm doing this for safety. I just don't see safety as a major issue that we can ignore how much it costs to have safety in Rotterdam, because we have Sheriff's Department and we have other ways of being safe. I guess that's the only thing. The only other thing I would do is like to see is a reform of how the board is elected, more members, because as I put it, this board is like watching a 3-on-2 basketball game for 2 years. It's like, it's 3-on-2 every time. I went to one meeting and I noticed that the votes were 3-2, 3-2, 3-2, or unanimous, where it was like a gimme. It's like, who wouldn't agree? So I would like to see maybe it brought up to 7 members. I don't think it was previously, I was looking at the pictures, to 7-member board, and possibly to circumvent two parties on the board, that somehow a third party is guaranteed. Now, my own idea was to have 1 Republican, 1 Democrat, and then 3 from the other conservative party, family workers, to have something like that, so more people are represented. Could be the farmer, dairy farmers, whatever it is.
Sir, before you leave, that is the current political configuration of this board. There's 1 Republican, there's 1 Democrat, and 3 conservatives.
Oh, I thought there were 3 Republicans and 3 Democrats.
Conservative.
And we don't necessarily side along those party lines. Mr. Christou is a conservative and I'm a Democrat.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can't speak for everyone
I
with
didn't
their
know
current
that.
Most
registration
of us are
is,
about as
but
apolitical as we can get.
We just said, hey, Ron, hold on.
I think we're quick to throw labels and, you know, based on endorsements during election season, but that is not necessarily how we fall in line, and
Yeah,
and
I
I
wish I didn't
appreciate,
bring that up.
I appreciate your comments. I will say that
Don't key on that as the most
no,
important.
99% of the time we do agree on things.
Okay.
You know, so hopefully we can move past some of the
Some of
animosity.
your questions, it was in my comments, if you want to take it.
What do I do with that?
Oh, that's your thing. Yeah, that's the page with the implementation plan, which kind of gives a little bit of the state guidelines on it.
Okay, so just to wrap it up, the most important thing I'm looking at is a functional board. We really need it in Rotterdam. We really need cooperation.
Agreed.
And we really need information and to be heard. And I know a lot of the voices are kind of like, not, you don't want to hear that stuff, but it goes with it. Anyway, I'm glad to have spoken here. I'm practicing public speaking.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else? That's it. Okay. I do have, is there anybody first who's here who didn't sign up who wants to speak? Okay. We did receive one email, and it's saying, as she wrote it to Ms. Marco, Diane, I'm hoping that you can send this to Ms. Collins for the meeting on Wednesday about metered water and my opinion on this. I spoke with her today. I'm very upset about hearing that the last administration, without the town residents' consent or approval, went ahead with a contract to add metered water. I am not in favor of this motion. My home is mortgaged and taxes to me are over $400 a month. I am a senior working full-time to make ends meet. This would displace me and many of my family members from the town of Rotterdam, along with any tax increase for some of my family members who are disabled and struggling to pay the taxes as we speak. As it is, Mahonison School has increased their taxes considerably every year and should not be allowed to have employees in Mahonison vote because it is a conflict of interest, but they do. This too should be addressed. It's kind of like giving yourself a raise with somebody else's money. When I heard Whispering Pines was going in, I thought our taxes were going to decrease, considering the fact that there is 94 acres and many more taxpayers added to your roll. Where is the analysis that would benefit the taxpayers? Because we know that we're going to be paying for the meters and the water as soon as this goes into effect, which is unacceptable. I want to see the analysis that this is going to benefit us and my cost behind it. I believe this board needs to get on the same page as, I swear I didn't know this, get on the same page as Ms. Collins as she is looking out for our interest as taxpayers. I say no to metered water, where's the analysis? I want to see the data. I want to have a vote. Thank you very much. I hope that you will include this at your board meeting so that your board will understand this is something that you don't decide when you're not paying the bills. Cynthia DiCaprio, and I believe she lives on Helderberg Avenue. Okay. Is there anybody else for privilege of the floor? Okay. So I'm closing privilege of the floor, and we'll do our first resolution, which is Resolution 116 of the year 2020. Clerk will read.
To enact introductory local law number 5 of 2022.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion.
second it.
Motion by Mr. Dodson, seconded by Mr. Christou. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christou?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera? Yes. I'm sorry. Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes. I'm sorry the speaker is not working for some reason.
Maybe we're not.
Oh, there it is.
Are we loose?
The resolution passes.
Thank you. It's mine's too.
The next resolution is number 117 of the year 2020.
22.
I'm sorry, we're going backwards. Then a night, okay, of the year 2022, and I will read the following statement by email. Town Board of the Town of Rotterdam, Town Clerk of the Town of Rotterdam. Appointment, Collins, supervision, subject appointments, Collins, supervision, and payment for services, etc., of Clark Collins. Dear Town Board members and Town Clerk, in accordance with the New York General Municipal Law and the Town of Rotterdam Code of Ethics, I am disclosing to you that any resolution or other action concerning the appointment, Collins, supervision, or payment of Clark Collins, including but not exclusively resolution numbers 11722 and 11822, could benefit my husband, Clark Collins. Because these actions could benefit my husband, I am providing this written disclosure that I may be deemed to also have an interest in these matters. This disclosure is being sent to the town board, the town clerk, and I am asking that this be included within the agenda materials in advance of the March 23rd, 2022 meeting. I am also asking that this letter be included in the official record of the town board's March 23rd, 2022 meeting. Finally, in addition to making written disclosure in this letter, I have also chosen to recuse myself from any discussion, vote, or other action relating to any appointment, call-in, supervision, or payment of Clark Collins. Very truly yours, Molly A. Collins. All right, so right now I'm going to turn the meeting over to Deputy Supervisor Dodson, and I will read the dais.
Supervisor Collins? Ms. Markle, will you read Resolution 117?
To adopt call-in and payment procedure for part-time water treatment plant operators.
Is there any discussion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second the motion.
Anyone on the question? Ms. Markle, will you read the roll?
Mr. Christo?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
On my vote, I'm going to vote yes to this. This is exactly what I requested previously, and I thank Attorney Tingley for drafting it and circulating it for comments. It is exactly what we need to make sure that we are covering our butts moving forward. So yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
4 yeses and 1 recused.
Moving on to the next resolution, 118-2022. Ms. Markle, will you read?
To amend resolution number 21-22 of the year 2022.
Any discussion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Anyone on the question? Ms. Markle, will you read the roll?
Mr. Christo?
On the question, although Mr. Collins and I might have exchanged a little passion there, there's no doubt in my mind that Clark Collins and Ian Bobman are both very qualified to do this. Therefore, I vote yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
4 yes, 1 recused.
At this point in time, Supervisor Collins can return. And with that, I'll turn the meeting back over to Supervisor Collins.
Next resolution should be 119 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
Appoint a senior building inspector.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christo?
I'm going to abstain from this vote.
Abstain. Mrs. Miller Herrera?
I was not able to get the information I requested on March 11th about applicants for the position, so I'm going to abstain.
Abstain. Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes,
3 yes, 2 abstain.
resolution passes. Next resolution is Resolution 120 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
Appoint count clerk for the Highway Department.
Any discussion? Do I
Madam
have a
Supervisor, I enthusiastically make the motion.
okay, motion by Mr. Enthusiastically made.
Yes, and I'll second.
I have a motion by Member Christou and a second by Mr. Dodson on the question. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christo?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Motion passes.
Jessica, to stand up.
Yes. Ms. Lawson, you want to stand up? Thank you.
Welcome.
Next resolution is Resolution 121 of the year 2022. Will the clerk read?
Authorize stipulation of settlement with RRA Apartments LLC.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. Anything on the question? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christo?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Okay, resolution passes. Next resolution is Resolution 122 of the year 2022. Will the clerk read?
Authorize a modification of professional services for well number 6.
Any discussion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion was made by Mr. Christou. Do I have a second? I'll second the motion by Member Collins. Anything on the question? Clerk will read the roll.
Mr. Christou?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Next resolution is Resolution 123 of the year 2022. Clerk will read.
Authorize a modification of professional services for proposed Burdick Street Sewer District Extension.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Member Christou. Do I have a second? I'll second the motion by Member Collins. On the question, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christou?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 124 of the year 2022. The clerk will read.
To approve budget transfers to the 2022 budget.
Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Motion by Mr. Mastriani. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Dodson. Anything on the question? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christou?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 125 of the year 22. Clerk will read.
To amend resolution number 65.22, extending the contract with Paul C. Sylvester for financial consulting services.
Is there any discussion? I think I'd like to say something in reference to what Mr. Kick said. We are extending it with Mr. Sebesta, but we do have ads out for a controller, for a permanent controller. So that is being worked on. In fact, I think Ms. Griffin has some, and she's compiling them all for the board members so that the board members can conduct interviews. So we are moving forward in that direction.
I would like to offer to Mr. Sebesta, plan to retire in 2020, and we brought him out of retirement, and he's been doing a tremendous job. He has a wealth of knowledge with over 30 years experience in the comptroller position, and he came into a difficult situation, as you remember, with our sewer district billing, and he helped us out with that. He's been an incredible resource for us here, and we're lucky to have him, and I'd like to keep him as long as possible. We'd like to hire a comptroller that he can train to come underneath and teach everything that he knows, and it's a great opportunity. And like Supervisor Collins said, the job is listed now, and we're looking forward to finding somebody that can step in and take over for him.
Any further discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Dodson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Mastriani. Anything on the question? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christou?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
On my vote, I'm gonna vote yes to this because I don't think we're in a great position to go without somebody in that role. I had hoped we'd be farther along in the hiring process of the controller, but all things being equal, we do need somebody at the helm that can do this work for us, so I'm going to vote yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 126 of the year 2022. Clerk will read.
To accept town board meeting minutes of March 9th, 2022.
Is there any discussion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Christou. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Dodson. Anything on the question? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Christou?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Mastriani?
Yes.
And Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
5 yes.
Motion passed. Resolution passes. God, I got nothing. All right. That concludes our resolutions for tonight. We'll now move on to committee reports. Is there any board member that wants to report on their committee?
Yeah, the Parks Committee will be meeting the first Monday of each month at 5:30. We welcome the public to contribute. The snow is melted, and we're in the beginning processes of evaluating the needs of the parks and prioritizing what can be done, and working towards figuring out what we can do this year. So,
Any other board member?
I have something under miscellaneous after.
And I have something under miscellaneous as well.
Okay, and go ahead, Mr. Christou.
Okay, I had a conversation today with Carl Strang, and those who don't know who Carl is. Carl is involved with the Elks and spearheads the annual law day that the supervisor's offices and the justice's offices usually coordinate. They're looking at the first week of May. I asked him to send the entire board an email to make sure that we're in the loop on that and whatever we can do. I had a sidebar conversation with Supervisor Collins, and of course she is on board. So I look forward to working that out with Carl. It's a great event where the youth come in and they spend a law day, and then there's a luncheon at the Elks Lodge. It's a very, very nice event.
And thank you for that, Councilmember Christou, and I think it's nice that we're getting back to where we can start meeting again after COVID, and it really is important for the youth of our town.
I believe there's a shout out required for the Chalmont Girls State Championship basketball team. We are very proud of your achievements. Thank you. And we need to get them in here for a proclamation. What an honor.
Yeah, that is good. Does anyone else have anything?
And how appropriate during Women's Month too.
Yes.
Yes, no, the proclamation is well deserved, and I'm actually meeting with somebody to see if we can post a little appreciation thing at the restaurant as well.
It's very nice of you, thank you. Anything else under miscellaneous? Okay.
Can I make a motion to adjourn?
Motion by Mr. Dodson, do I have a second?
I will second that.
Second by Mr. Christou, all in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned, thank you.